Hello, today I'll be doing a video on the trial of Gabriel Fernandez, about a very unsettling case of child abuse involving an 8-year-old boy. Not only did his parents abuse him, but social workers failed to protect him and were later charged. I'm just going to get to the point. This was a very frustrating watch. I couldn't believe the amount of incompetent, selfish, self-absorbed adults that this child was surrounded by. And I'm not even just talking about the parents themselves, because that's a given, but outside sources that are literally there to protect children. More specifically, the faculty at the boys' school. I couldn't believe that the principal at this little boy's school was very reluctant to get involved when there were clear-cut signs on this boy's body that he was being mistreated. And I don't want to bash on his teacher too much because I know she was trying to help and she was very concerned, but this woman really didn't have any common sense whatsoever. I just don't understand how you can see a child walk into your classroom with a bloodshot eye, like his eye was literally filled with blood, and 2 black eyes swollen shut, or cigarette burns on his scalp. Like, how can you let that child go back home when this kid is literally telling you that his parents shot him with a BB gun to the face? Like, how do you let a child go back home after that? How do you not call the police right then and there at the school and let the cops see for themselves that this kid is all beaten up? I mean, I know she meant well, but it's like no common sense. The only thing she did was call the same social worker who clearly didn't give a crap about this kid, but she kept just calling the same social worker. That's literally the only thing that she did. And it honestly felt like she was very reluctant to do more because she was more concerned about losing her job. And that goes back to when I mentioned that the adults in this kid's life who he depended on were selfish. It's like every adult that noticed something was wrong was more concerned about losing their job. The social workers involved in this boy's case were very neglectful, and they did end up showing an example of a social worker that does their job properly. This happens in episode 5. We see an example of what's supposed to happen. But the problem is that the foster mom was black, and that shows the racial hypocrisy. And they did talk briefly about the double standards of when it comes to race and how black mothers are most likely to get their kids taken away for any minor or perceived infraction. But it was so brief and it should have been touched on more. And all throughout the episodes, everyone was acting so perplexed and shocked that nothing was done more. Like, oh my God, like, why wasn't anything done? Why didn't anyone protect this boy? Oh my God, the system failed. And it's so obvious. It's because the mother was a dark Caucasian. Many people want to pretend that Mexicans are people of color, but really they identify as white. This abusive woman and her husband got away with what they did because they're classified as white. The system failed because of white supremacy and not wanting to punish people who are classified as white, even if that means protecting someone that's white. Which is why they were so far up the ass of this black foster mom. The black foster mother was getting into an altercation, like a verbal, maybe slightly physical altercation with her girlfriend. I don't know, like, she's claiming it didn't happen, but the fight had nothing to do with the kid. They were just arguing or fighting in front of the kid, in front of the baby, and that's why they came. So it had really nothing to do with child abuse. And let me tell you that the social worker, she not only came to this woman's house, to this black woman's house, but she came with cops, and she was so goddamn extra. Like, she literally, like, was turning the water on, telling the woman to remove the baby's clothes to see if there were any marks on the baby, checking the fridge, checking the stove, checking the toilet to see if it flushed. She was so damn extra, which is great. Like, that's her job. That's great that she's that damn extra. But why aren't they that extra when it comes to white people who are accused of being abusive? Like the black foster mom, like she was literally just like someone literally just made up a story about her arguing with someone, and that's why the social worker came. But no one came to Gabriel Fernandez's rescue when he's walking around with 2 black eyes and cigarette burns on his scalp. Like, no one did shit when he walked into school or walked in public looking like this. But the moment a black woman argues with another person in front of her foster kid, they got cops and social workers going through her shit like they got a warrant out. And no one wants to be honest about this. Like, they love the benefits and privileges of white supremacy, and when the system puts them ahead of another black person. But when the system backfires and doesn't protect their offspring or someone else's offspring who's the same race as them, then they want to cry foul. Like, oh my God, the system failed. Like, what did you think was going to happen? You let evil pit bulls run around in your community. You know, they're going to bite back and hurt one of you. Like, what did you think was going to happen? White supremacy comes with a price. And another thing that I really hated, I think this happens around episode 3, where they tried to humanize the mother, the abusive mother who let the stepfather abuse her little boy, Gabriel, and she was also torturing him as well. And they tried to humanize her by saying that she, you know, had a rough childhood. Like, who the hell cares what her childhood was like? They had this wacky psychiatrist talk about how she had every disorder that you can imagine. Like, she was literally listing off every disorder you've ever heard of. It was like a parody. They even listed that she had an eating disorder, and I'm like, what the hell does an eating disorder have to do with you torturing your kid and making him sleep in a cupboard? They were really trying to soften this woman's image, and that really pisses me off when they do that with Caucasians. They try and say, oh my God, they had a mental illness to justify their actions. It's not like they can just be a terrible person who made terrible decisions and they need to be punished for it. Like, no, they need to put like a mental illness on it. And not only were they trying to slap on a mental illness excuse, but they showed clips, they showed footage of this woman being in jail, and she's like literally acting like a fool. Like, she's being very belligerent, and she even took the handcuffs from one of the guards. She's acting like an actual animal, and the guards were like softballing her. Like, she's acting a damn fool, and the guards were like coddling her. They were coddling this bitch. They were like, oh, what did we do? What's wrong? What happened? What can we do? Oh my God, why are you acting this way? And they were like coddling her. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. Go watch episode 3 and hear how these guards are talking to her. And she's like in jail because she's waiting for trial for abusing her kid, for torturing her kid, and they're literally coddling her. No way they would act that way with a black prisoner for any infraction. We don't even have to be in jail for violent offense. They would never be that soft and dainty with us. I couldn't stop rolling my eyes. It was so cringy. And not only that, there was another part of the series that really pissed me off, and it had to do with a woman that worked with the stepfather that abused Gabriel. She got on trial and said her opinion of him did not change, despite the fact that he punched a child. And this whole thing was very sickening to sit through. She literally sat there and chuckled because the lawyer kept questioning her, like, you don't see anything wrong with punching an 8-year-old? She was just a real piece of shit. And again, this whole series was very sickening to sit through, seeing all these double standards and how children really are at the mercy of us, and they really are vulnerable. It's just really sad, and I give it like a 6 out of 10.